Welcome to Understanding Narcissists. Thank you so much for joining me. This video is going to be about the ethics and the ethical considerations when dealing with narcissists and what you do, and especially with respect to your own principles as an individual. I guess that goes without saying, but I still want to bring that forward. We have a morality question when confronted with narcissistic issues and narcissistic people, especially when you're informed about them. And it also depends on how desperate you are to get away from them. Broadly speaking, there's kind of two ways you can look at it. Is this a war where anything goes, for the most part? Where it's a question of survival, and your survival is based on overcoming them, and so you do anything you can to overcome them without any moral questions whatsoever? Or is it something where you want to be the better man or woman, virtuous, principled, stand up, come forth, be honest, and possibly treat them like you do with everybody else? And or even, commit to your values, whatever they may be, your beliefs, and how you handle them, even if it really empirically just doesn't work as well. You just stick to your guns. Well, I must say that I'm probably an advocate of the former one. I'm more of a get it done and recognize the situation you're in and the danger you could be in, which could include death. It could. And so therefore, do what you can, anything you can, to keep you and your family safe. Now, obviously, that depends on the severity of the situation. I'm kind of assuming that away. I'm assuming that it's a severe situation. How do you handle it? Well, the thing to consider, too, is that you're up against somebody who really doesn't have morals and really can believe anything. Can really believe and justify anything in order to get what they want. And that includes hurting you, hurting your loved ones, physically, too. Hurting your pets, threatening you in subtle ways. How do you deal with a person like that? Well, obviously this is a subjective thing because everybody's got different values and different principles. And so how you go about it can depend on what you believe. I mean, it may be virtuous and principled to do it the former way, like it's a war. So you do anything. You don't pull any punches just because you're an upstanding person. And even if you're a swell person, where do you draw the line? How do you interpret that line? This seems like a silly question, and I'm doing it. I'm attacking it from a very broad angle, and I want to narrow that angle down a little bit and get really specific as this video goes on and towards its end. Because once you sort of draw out that map yourself of what's good and bad and what you're willing to do and what you're not willing to do in order to protect yourself from narcissists. Because as dangerous as narcissists are and as effective they can be at controlling you and causing destruction, they're also very, very weak. And once you make the decision to go to the wall with them and actually fight them, they really don't have all that much going on. They're not very strong. But if you're weak, then they can get you. And so there's almost my stance or my opinion on this subject would almost be that, when you fight narcissists, really, you're almost not even fighting, you're just being strong. If you adopt strength in your own life, personal strength, in the face of their intimidation, you don't succumb to their illusion, and you simply resist them. But resist in a way by overcoming, not dominating, not attacking them per se, except in maybe self-defense, but being that immovable rock that they cannot overcome. That is a way to beat narcissists. Now, I wish it was that simple, because there are times when you're faced with real considerations, real dangerous situations. And that reality, that's a tangible consideration. If you can do something like trick them, or lie, or exploit their own weaknesses, casting their attention elsewhere, manipulating them, because in ways that they're not going to know, because I mean, they're pretty easy to manipulate. They're pretty easy to fool. They're very vulnerable. I mean, when you take it, it's just a completely different angle. I look at them like they're they're this extremely dangerous creature, but really, they're just weak, disheartened, undeveloped children who are really angry and really want to hurt you. I mean, that's all they really are. So when you think about it, they're not that hard to overcome. Not truly. I mean, they're not strong. So at what point, in the face of danger, do you say enough is enough? Do you go forward and stop them, or do you withdraw and risk being hurt further? If you can interpret it that way. Some people might not agree with me on that. I mean, you might want to take the stance that being strong is enough. And maybe it is. Maybe that's enough. That simply recognizing them for what they are and treating them as such, not necessarily calling them out on it, not getting in a big wordy debate about what's going on with them and how they feel. That, let me just say right now, I think that is almost entirely useless. It's potentially dangerous and completely useless. Standing up and calling them for what they are, what is it, calling a duck, really doesn't work well with them. I don't think that's a constructive thing. I'm not saying it's never a good thing, but especially if you're worried about your safety, probably not a good thing, because that's a big trigger. And that's just not something you want to do with them. But calling them out of what they're doing, at least, being not who they are, but what they're doing, and hurting other people and not owning up to it, bringing it out in the open, is that the best way to go? It's for you to answer, because it's something you have to reach for yourself. But I did say that I prefer the more warlike mentality. I see it as combat. Now, at the same time, it's kind of a mixture of both. I think it's not so much, are you going to betray your principles? It's what your principles are. And I identify the situation as being dangerous. And so therefore, I have to do what I have to do in order to protect myself. Now, keep in mind, too, that I grew up in this kind of thing. That this was my world. And that the only real way for me to have a life was to dismantle the illusion. And now that's true with all of us for the most part, but I grew up with it. So I had to go back, and it was kind of a combative thing. It was a combative situation. And so I will more readily embrace that. Now, I'm not saying it's violent. It's just that it's emotionally tumultuous. I'm willing to go through that and not pull punches and call a duck, so that I can protect myself and my family. But there again lies the issue of, well, what's the difference between the two? How do you approach handling narcissists, and what is right and what's wrong? I would never say that I manipulated anybody. I never lied. I never did anything that would cause more destruction in their lives than I didn't need to do, that I didn't need to cause, or that I cause more anyway. Because I mean, the plain fact is they destroy themselves. You're not the reason for their pain and suffering. You're just not. They were suffering long before they ever met you. If they met you later on, if you haven't known them since they were young, and they're going to suffer a lot more after you. And so that's just something you need to accept, because you're just not responsible for it. You can't be responsible for it. They're responsible for it, but they won't be responsible for it, and that's just what it is, and they're going to have to deal with that. But in this moment, when you're faced with danger and the question of possibly physical injury and threats, what are you going to do? What are you willing to do? I do advocate certain, maybe it's questionable, maybe it's not, it depends on who you are, but lying, fibbing, fooling them in order to get them off your back. I do. And little things that draw their attention away. Especially given the narcissist that it is. I would do it. If I had to. Whilst also being strong, of course. But, sometimes there's a wild card element. You don't know exactly what they're going to do, so you have to be flexible in yourself. You can say, oh, well, I'm only going to stick to my guns and these certain things that I believe in, which is great, and continue to do that. I think that's wonderful. However, there's a question of how effective it would be in the face of a narcissist. And if you have to do something else in a moment's notice, in order to perhaps survive in a way, I'm not saying that they're actually going to kill you in that moment, whether they are or they aren't. It decides your future, decides your family's future. What are you going to do in order to stop them? Because that's what you have to do. I talk about leaving, and you always have to leave, but that doesn't render them harmless. Unfortunately, that makes them very harmful. You really have to overcome a narcissist before you leave. Otherwise, you're not healed at all. You're not recovered, and you're vulnerable to another attack or another narcissist. Easily. You have to reach a certain point of understanding and realization and improvement in yourself. You have to recognize your own shortcomings, whatever they may be, your own weaknesses to narcissists. So, that's always something you have to consider. This is a little bit like a college classroom now, and almost like a debate is going to start, a rigorous ethical debate. But you have to have it with yourself. You have to have it. Everything I learn, I teach you. There's kind of a black magic element involved. There's a dark art of, once you understand narcissists, you have a question of, how are you going to handle them with that new understanding? Are you going to use that understanding to help and protect others? Or do you want to use it in order to upset them or get some kind of revenge? Now, I don't advocate the revenge part, but if you have that certain ability where you know how to injure them, then, are you willing to do that to protect yourself and others? It's that question you have to keep. And sometimes it also just involves bringing reality to them that they don't want to deal with. You think you're doing something wrong, but really it is, you're just treating them like another human being. And we do not treat them like other human beings. We give them all kinds of, so much leeway, so much slack. They get so many things in so many different ways because we recognize them as children. So they are, at least if it's instinctive or whatever it is, whatever's going on, they've got that. And maybe they shouldn't have that. I know they need it. I know they need it to survive, and they're going to find somebody that'll give them that room to be children and do whatever they want, but something you have to consider. Anyway, I hope this video didn't go on too long. I hope it wasn't too philosophical. I hope it was practical enough, because it is a reality. Share this video with somebody you think might benefit from it. Comment in the comment section below on your approach with this matter and how you feel about it, and what lines you draw as far as behavior goes in dealing with narcissists, if there are any lines, how you judge that. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you on the next episode, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye.